What's good, everyone? I'm back with a very special episode where we induct Dimitreus Newell into the Five Timers Club and talk about a banger of a somewhat recent indie horror flick in this, the 46th episode of Murders with Mertens. Hello, horror fan best friends and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 46th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror. Lo-fi, hypnotic fever dreams, cosmic horror, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror-adjacent thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damn cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. It certainly helps with the engagement. If you haven't already, please maybe consider subscribing to this channel if you are so inclined. It's free to do, and you look cool doing it. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars is always appreciated. Enough of all that housekeeping, though, because I have the great pleasure of welcoming back for his 5th appearance, Mr. Gifted Dim 63 himself, Dimitreus Newell. Dim, how the hell are you? What is going on? Oh,
it's been a minute since we've had a new episode. But we're back at it. I'm glad we're here, especially to talk about this one.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been just slightly over a year since we last recorded something together, which is hard to believe. Last year burned by in such a heartbeat, and I had this just a horrible drought of drive to really get anything new recorded in the past 6 months. And past couple of months I've been trying to get back into it, and it's been going a little bit better. I got something out here last week, and then this one will come up in the new week, and I've got somebody set to record something new, just in time for another film that's out, something by the same directors. So there should be some good times there. But yeah, man, what you been up to? I know we often talk off cam here about games and stuff that we've been watching, but anything super fun lately?
So I'm still waiting. Actually, the audience doesn't know, but I'm gonna be moving to Okinawa. I'm still waiting on hearing back on details about that. But other than that, I've been doing the same old stuff that I normally do, hanging out with Pike right behind me and playing some games. Actually, I was playing No Rest for the Wicked earlier on the early access.
Okay.
It's been great. I've been pretty addicted to that. And other than that, I've been playing Dave the Diver on PlayStation. I played it on Switch already, but it's such a good game that I had to go back. I had to go back to it.
Yeah, that's one of those that I definitely popped on a wish list just because I know I'd like to dig into it sooner or later, but I've got such a horrible backlog and I don't need to be spending money on video games at the moment because, that physical media bug has absolutely gotten me. That's something that we talk about quite often. And spent a little money on some second sight films and, importing some other stuff besides that. So
the good thing is with Dave the Diver, it's on PS Plus. So if you have that, it's free. So
but not on the PS Plus Essentials, unfortunately. Yeah.
It's on extra, I think.
Yeah, it's like the next tier up. So unfortunately, and I know it's like a $20 game. So, if I can get myself through Persona 3 Reload here before too long, just chipping away at that a little bit at a time, loving every minute of it. But wow. Not as long, I can tell, as Persona 5, but still taking some time to get through. I must just be extra thorough when I'm in Tartarus. I don't know. But that tends to eat up a good chunk of that game. So
it does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. But yeah, it's good times. And uh, again, glad that I had another Persona game that's actually gotten its claws into me as much as Persona 5 did. So, maybe I'll give 4 yet another try on one of the many, many different versions that I own it on as far as different systems. I bought a physical copy of that for the Vita back in the day, even, and I still couldn't get it to sink its claws into me. But
It has the best version of it too, that's unfortunate.
yeah, I know. I'm pretty sure I own a copy for the Switch, which would also be, a good way to play it because a little bit bigger screen. But
Mhm.
yeah, I find myself often playing Persona games through a remote play as it is. I'll pop it
Yeah,
on the laptop and then chill out in bed playing some of that just because you can get extra cozy with a game like that. And
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
definitely cozy game for sure.
Yeah. You know, we need to get into the overall topic here, and I'm realizing, oh crap, I didn't take super good notes about the people behind the film. So I'm going to be absolutely horrible about this here, but we are gathered here this evening to discuss 2021, possibly
I got August
2020.
2024. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's its festival release date, but
Mhm.
close enough, right? We're talking Come True. Um, and wow, I'm blanking on the director at the moment. So
Anthony Scott Burns.
there you go. Thank you, sir, for picking up my horrible slack. Um, yeah, man, this is a fucking movie. I love movies that kind of especially horror films that break your reality a little bit about as far as what is a dream, what is not a dream, stuff like that, the dream within a dream type thing, those types of
Mhm.
tropes. And we were talking a little bit before this recording about how I've had this very steady stream now of this is the third episode in a row where reality is breaking and you don't know what time period or where exactly you are between
Yeah.
this and reincarnation and Oculus. Yeah, that's a pretty solid theme running through those films. Um,
Yeah, I love Oculus too. That's such a, I feel like it's so underrated.
Yeah, well, so's reincarnation. Honestly, it's part of that big J horror boom from like the mid aughts, right?
Mhm.
And
Oh,
the
yeah.
same director as The Grudge. It's just that one got all the attention because of the American remake, right?
True
Um,
that.
yeah, and unfortunately, not a wonderful remake. At least The Ring had a good one.
Reincarnation didn't get one. Did
No,
it?
not at all, which is,
Yeah, I didn't think
kind of surprising, but it's, especially after rewatching it a good number of times, getting ready to podcast about it. It's just one of those films where it's like, I know really enjoy this when I originally saw it. It's got a special place there for me, but I didn't realize how much I really, really enjoy it, until you really start diving in with something like that. And the same goes for this film. We were both talking how we discovered this through Nightlight and Prince and the folks from that podcast. And ultimately, yeah, it was really cool first watch back then when it was first released. And I know I bought a digital version of that off of Apple just immediately. Um,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's one that, I've thought about here and there over the past few years, but I was really excited when you brought this one up as a potential film to talk about. So I got to ask why specifically, other than what we've already talked about, what really makes you want to talk about Come True?
So, I think it has to be my fascination with just dreams in general, I think. I think dreams are such a like a fascinating thing that nobody can really grasp like what everybody's dreaming about or you can't have the same dream as somebody else, and that's such a crazy feeling to me. And it's like scientists have been trying to study this stuff for years and years, and I actually in one of my college classes, I wrote a paper on just dreams and how they affect us and stuff. So I've always had a fascination with dreams in general, and I like that they they incorporate more of a horror element. You don't know exactly what's going on and why she's sleeping all over the place and all that stuff, and it's just, it's really fascinating and very original, I think, in that way.
Yeah, it's I think a lot of us, especially horror fans, we have that a little bit of a fear of the sleep paralysis demon, right? And that is something that definitely has its place in this film. Um, it's again, like you said, what are dreams? What do we really glean from them? Is it just the brain kind of shaking out the day and just sorting, kind of like your brain is the computer that's defragging its hard drive, right? Um,
Mhm.
is that all it is? Is it more meaningful than that? I love, and not to get too heavy into the plot quite yet, but I love the shared experiences that they are specifically studying that they don't really get into until we're really deep into the sleep study that's in this film.
Right, right.
Um, and how it's not so much a sleep study from what are dreams, what do they mean, what can we learn about uh, sleep in general from a study like this, but it's almost more of an anthropological study because they talk
Yeah,
about it being, this shared, thing that, all sorts of cultures and, societies have reported over the centuries that they are, ultimately researching in this thing. And yeah, that's just kind of cool, coming at it from I guess a branch of study that normally you wouldn't think of interfacing with this type of technology or this branch of scientific study either. It's really cool. It's a pretty
I
well
really like
acted
that.
film too. It's got so much going for a style standpoint. Just those cool blues and greens running through everything. Um, got that fun synth pop score that just, it's absolutely perfect because it's so dreamy to begin with, right?
Right. And I think it's crazy too with and we'll get into it and as we start looking at, what these kind of shared dreams that we end up talking about are and what involves what they go through as the dreams happen in each section. But for a second, I feel like the film makes you want to think that it's almost like maybe it was like an alien possession and this happened to them in the past and they just don't remember. And I feel like that they mess with you in that way throughout the film as well. 'Cause it's always, like, the same, like, shadowy figures that she sees, but then you find out that another person does later, and you're like,
Mhm.
why would they both have the same type of thing?" And then you realize that it it throws you all over the loop by the end.
Yeah, yeah, and there's, probably different ways that you can interpret the ending of this film as well, which is always fun. I love an open-ended story like that where it is not 100% clear what's going on. You could, take a very, very literal interpretation of how it
Yeah.
ends based on, what we see at the ending, but, you could go all sorts of levels up and down from there. So, yeah, that's super cool. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think it's like I said, a pretty well acted film. I don't know, the main actor in this. I don't know her from a lot of stuff. I know she's done, a few things. We were
I've never
talking.
seen her in anything else, I don't think, not to my knowledge,
Yeah,
anyway.
I was looking up
She has
her.
a very specific look.
Oh yeah, yeah. And they did like the perfect haircut for this character too.
Yeah.
It was super dope.
Yeah.
But also the guy that plays Riff, like I was saying, I know him from like Hemlock Grove on Netflix, and that is about it. And
It's
everybody
funny,
else,
in my notes, I called him Daniel Radcliffe, so
yeah,
'cause he looks like Harry Potter, so I was like, "Yo, I'm just gonna call him Harry Potter in my notes from now on."
yeah, he plays like like a gypsy werewolf in that show, and it's so so different from this character,
That's
But
funny.
yeah, everybody else is just kind of like character actors and, sort of nobodies because I do not recognize anyone else in this film. Even the guy that plays the doctor, you would think that he's, maybe he is in a ton of other stuff. I didn't really go down too much of a rabbit hole with him. But yeah, everybody's kind of perfect in their parts, though.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
yeah,
good.
it's so lucky an independent film like this. Of course, it comes from Canada, and they get plenty of support, for making film like that. But yeah, just so lucky that it came together the way that it did. And
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully if a handful of people listen to this thing, they can consider giving this movie a watch and you spread the good word of come true. um
Totally.
yeah, at least we can hope, right? Because it would be fun to hear more people talking about this one for sure. um
Yeah, I mean, I feel like anybody who just enjoys movies, this isn't really, I wouldn't even say that this is very scary in a lot of ways. There's definitely some horrific imagery, but I don't
oh
think it's
yeah,
like I don't think it's super scary or where people who don't like horror wouldn't like this film. I think it's more like
yeah.
dramatic, I think.
Yeah, I think if some people were, kind of on the fence about scary movies in general, then this would be a good film to show them just because
Yeah.
it's, like you said, it's not over the top terrifying. Yeah, there are some, little scary elements here and there, particularly the dream sequences, because you just
Yeah.
don't know what's going to pop out. But, once you've seen it before, that kind of, tempers that a bit. But,
Yeah.
but ultimately, yeah, it's, yeah, you're right. This would be a good one for people like that for sure.
And
Um,
maybe somebody who's not really like or getting used to horror in general, I think
mhm.
maybe this is a good start because it's like, not a whole lot of edge of your seat type stuff. It's more of a slow, like methodical walk through this kind of dreamlike environment.
Right, right. This would be a good one for a, hey, you really enjoy Drive, but what if you got rid of most of the ultra violence and Ryan Gosling and added a slight horror element to it? There you go. That's come
Yeah.
true. Um,
The soundtrack is definitely reminiscent of, It Follows also. I think it has a
yeah.
similar vibe.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the kind of I keep thinking of this film as sort of lo-fi in general, and
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
not just from like some of the music, but also just the way that things look in general. And then the technology that's used within the sleep study and everything is absolutely
Yeah.
lo-fi. It is old school. Everything's CRTs and, tons of wires everywhere and all the,
Yet there's cell
imagery.
phone.
Yep, there are cell phones. Yeah, it's not like It Follows where it's this nondescript time period and they have odd little pieces of tech that you're like, what the hell is that? No, it's everything seems like, yeah, it's taking place in, current-ish day, but yeah, all the tech is in the study seems like it's from 30, 40 years ago. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
absolutely.
Very interesting. Well, speaking of tech and flickering CRTs, why don't we jump into this thing? We start off with the flickering title card that kind of comes together on the CRT, and I love how it's all stretched out and it all sort of forms eventually there. Um,
Very dreamy.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
It's and reminiscent of a lot of cool films from the 80s too.
Yeah.
Love that. We kind of move from there to this POV shot, moving ever closer to a dark hill with one scraggly little tree with everything shrouded in darkness and mist and early shout out here to the synth heavy score and the soundtrack is, they perfectly fit everything that we're seeing. But we move in closer, seeing the bare outlines of a tunnel or a cave before being enveloped in darkness and then brightening slightly as we head deeper inside, coming to a door that swings open like a silent Resident Evil transition.
It
Kind of
is.
Yep. We get some
It
high
is.
walls passing by on either side as we approach the dark silhouette of a naked man flanked by two spiral textured columns. Just before we get to the back of the man's shaved head, our protagonist Sarah snaps awake with a gasp, and she's been sleeping in a sleeping bag on a slide in a playground, and now it's morning.
Looking dangerous.
Yeah, no kidding. This must be a good neighborhood or something, because holy crap, I can't even imagine, especially for an 18-year-old girl. Like, wow.
Yes.
But I got to say, the dream sequences were so difficult to take notes on, because I wanted to get a lot of detail from them, because there's a lot going on in them, and some of it ties.
Later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And some of it ties, quite a bit to what's happening, in the scenes before and after the dream sequences. But just so much of it is just so striking and so cool that I would feel bad glossing over it. But Sarah, she picks up her phone. She sees it's like 7 o'clock or whatever, so it's like time. Yeah, time to get ready for the day. So she packs up her stuff and rides off on her bike, and we get the first of these little chapter cards that are spread throughout the movie. And this one is the persona.
That's so funny. We were just talking about that too, which is so weird to me. But yeah, I think I also noticed that like when it's daytime like that, there's almost like instead of that blue filter, it's like a greenish kind of like turquoise style filter in the background. There's nothing, it's never like completely clear on any of this movie. Like, it's always some kind of colored filter on
And that's
everything.
okay. That's okay. I love a heavily stylized color palette like that.
Oh,
I'm totally
100%.
down.
I'm there for it.
Yep. So we cut from this chapter card to Sarah. She's kind of like perched on her bike. She's patiently waiting for something, but you can tell she is ready to jump. And she's basically waiting for her mom to leave so that she can enter the house. Unfortunately, they're never really clear as to what the issue is between them, other than, Sarah doing everything that she can do to avoid her, including sleeping outside. I appreciate that a movie that's about, dreams and breaks of reality, that they don't fill in every detail, because that also makes it extra dreamlike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty neat. Because as much as I would like to know what the actual beef between her and her mom is, it works for this story. So yeah. So her mom pulls off in this old Cadillac, and she pulls up in her bike, and we cut to her showering and getting some fresh clothes and snagging the last of the coffee and a piece of toast as she's hustling off to school.
Breakfast of champions.
Yeah, you know it.
It's like wake up on a slide at 7-Eleven just to go get some toast and some coffee at your house.
Oh God. One thing that I definitely noticed this time around that I never noticed in my first watch through of this film, all the cars in this film are relatively old.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
at least for the time period, because it's clearly set in modern times with the cell phones and everything. But there's not any new cars that I noticed in this thing.
Like purposely ambiguous for that whole dreamlike state that you
Yep.
feel in like this whole time. Even when she was biking to her house, she's like not going very fast, but she's like hunched like she's about to like start speeding down the street,
Yep.
but she's not. She's like just kind of gradually moving her legs. So it's like all that stuff's really noticeable the more times you watch this film.
Yep. Yep. Definitely one of those films that rewards repeat viewings, for sure.
Yeah.
So we cut to Sarah yawning her way through class, and then the bathroom. She takes a little cat nap in the library, and her phone wakes her up. And, clearly the inconsistency of her sleeping arrangements, it's messing with her rest, right?
Yep.
She meets her friend Zoe at a coffee shop after school, where they discuss having her stay over, but Zoe's got to talk it over with her parents. She's cool with it. She's happy to help out her friend. Everybody needs a Zoe in their life. But yeah, she's got to clear it with the folks. And in the meantime, Sarah's got to, figure something out. And before she can figure things out for that evening, she needs to sneak back into her house to grab her sleeping bag and some of her stuff because, she left it there at the house while she was at school. And, she needs something safe for all this crap. But at the end of the day, I'm sure her locker at school is not big enough. But yeah, we get her mom bursting into her room just after she jumps out the window. In
This is
her
the one time we see her, right? Like this is the only
like from
shot
the
that we're getting
front,
from the mom?
yeah, we
Yeah.
don't really see much of her mom, super close up or anything other than this part. And I think it's somewhat clear that her mom cares and that she wants to be able to talk to her, but clearly Sarah's not having it. It, who knows what's going on between them. Um, Interesting though.
Yeah, because I don't recall her ever checking her phone to see if her mom even calls her. Like, I don't maybe her mom just gave up, you think?
There's plenty of times throughout the film where her phone's ringing and it's her mom and she ignores the call or sends it to voicemail. But yeah, it's just kind of sad. It's
Yeah, it's a rocky relationship.
oh yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I feel like a lot of us have gone through things with parents or other family members or whatever at one time or another where maybe weren't on the best of terms, and it's that shit's hard. It's because these are people that clearly love you, or at least they should, and it having a breakdown in communication like that. I mean, it sucks. It's
Oh, absolutely.
not just from a standpoint of you're not working out your shit, but everybody who's involved feels bad about it. So yeah, it's I think it's very very easy for a lot of people to relate to what's going on, even if they haven't had that exact type of situation. Um, yeah, and I have here in my notes, I see my one major gripe about this film is that we don't get any hints as to what happened between Sarah and her mother. Um,
Yeah.
and again, I'm not the type that typically wants that kind of stuff spoon fed to him either. I appreciate a film that kind of drops you in the middle of things and you just kind of figure things out from context. But yeah, it still adds to the dreamlike nature of things, and that wedge, it's just there.
I have,
Um,
once we get to the ending, I have some more inquiry about the whole mom situation, but I'll wait until we get
Yeah,
there.
and I can kind of tell where you're going with that, and I think that's not a bad thing worth bringing up there too. So yeah, we'll absolutely circle back to that. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we cut from the mom to Sarah pedaling off into the night, and she settles in for the night on the same playground slide. She's you can see it in her face. She's rattled by her almost interaction with her mother, and yeah, well, she tucks herself in there, and I love that after she closes her eyes, we see the stars start to wink out over her.
Mhm.
It's which is it's almost like her surroundings are part of the dream as well because things kind of get darker around her as well as she drifts off to sleep. Um, it's cool.
It
Um,
is.
we move forward through a field covered with ground fog, approaching another door. I love how the doors are very much different every single time. They're a different style,
There's always a door.
or yeah, or something similar to a door at least. But yeah, it's always a different style of door, or it's double doors all of a sudden, or
Mhm.
something like that. But yeah, we go through another door and we find ourselves continuing through a hallway with block walls. This time, bodies are lining both sides with their heads stuck in the walls. Some of them are hanging from their necks. Some of them are kind of knelt, but all of them have the face, at least, of their heads mashed into the wall. And we get something of a pulse of light as we move through this circular opening at the end, this time emerging among a grouping of pillars. On the central pillar stands the man from before, this time turned towards us, but his face is in shadow. And just as we nearly collide with him, Sarah wakes up in class to the laughter of her classmates. Always a great way to start the day there. I love, instead of go fuck yourselves or fuck off, when she turns around to hiss at them, she says, fuck yourselves. Um, it's just kind of interesting how different that is. And yeah, I appreciate her being a little pissy with them because, I think it's pretty clear she's not like the popular girl or anything, but also, I mean, fuck them. Um, she meets
I
up
mean, you
with,
gotta believe that she's irritable from maybe having a couple hours of sleep a day. Like,
right.
we don't know how much sleep she's actually getting, so she's probably just in a daze all the time. So when
Yeah.
she gets these little small increments of sleep and then she gets rattled awake, I'd be pissed off too. Like,
Yeah, you know it.
yeah,
It's so easy when you're extra tired to be, a little short. Yep. She meets
yeah,
Zoe after school for coffee, and while she goes to doctor up her refill, she sees a posting on the bulletin board for a sleep study offering $12 an hour. I've never seen someone tear a tab off of a flyer like that with more excitement than she does. Um, but yeah, clearly this is like perfect timing for her because things are not settled with being able to stay with Zoe, and she can't keep sleeping outside like this. So she heads over to the facility, and I'm assuming it's at a university. But I gotta say, I love that brutalist architecture of the building.
oh, I was gonna say, I also made notes about that building. Because
Yeah.
it's so different from every other building you see in this film, and it's very, like, it has that control, like, the control video game vibe to it,
Yep. Yeah,
and,
brutalist architecture is just so interesting. It's tons of
oh, it's great.
concrete and everything is so blocky and just sharp, sharp lines everywhere.
Mhm.
I think we got a little bit of that in Infinity Pool as well,
Yeah.
here and there. And you see it in a lot of like former Soviet bloc countries, and it's just something you don't see quite as much of on the regular here in the US, even though it is prevalent still. It's neat, and it's kind of it's imposing, and it feels really institutional, right?
And I made a note that it seems very, like, clean, like, everything looks very clean, like, it's got that, like, really hospital type, like, really clean vibe to it.
Mhm. Yep. We get Anita, one of the researchers, greeting her and running her through a questionnaire while Sarah fills out some forms. It's revealed that Sarah's sleep has been absolute shit of late, and she drinks a fair amount of coffee. I think she says somewhere between 3 and 6 cups a day, but I think she's clearly lying. I think she's drinking a lot more coffee than that, which
Yep.
is also going to fuck with her sleep like crazy. Um, but yeah, they get to a question about her ever being diagnosed with a sleep disorder, and she says no, but ultimately admits that she sleepwalked as a child, but was never formally diagnosed. Um,
Mhm.
Anita checks her blood pressure and explains to Sarah a bit about what she'll experience in the study. She makes a big point of mentioning REM sleep, and they part ways. She's not automatically in, but she's hopeful. She should hear back in just a few days or something like that. Um,
She
and
mentions that it's gonna be 2 months also.
yeah, yeah. So it's a fairly lengthy study. She gets paid and she gets a place to sleep. So it's kind of perfect for her.
Yep.
Um, we cut to Sarah staying over at Zoe's, and this kid is a good friend. She's there for her with whatever's happening with Sarah's mom. She's offering a roof over her head. She's even asking after her mental health. She wants to make sure that she's doing okay. She says that thing to her about, it would be okay if you're not okay. And it's, you love to see it. This is a good
Yeah,
friend. Um,
totally.
so Sarah ultimately just wants to sleep. She's desperate for it. She rolls over to do so and closes her eyes, and you see this just absolute look of bliss on her face. But also she's absolutely wide awake because her eyes
Yep.
immediately open back up, and she's just, nope, can't fall asleep. Um,
I had to ask you too, like, do you think that she slept at all in this second? Because you when they pan the shot at her friend seems like she's been sleeping for a minute. So I don't know if they are implying that she slept for a second and then wakes up and then stays awake the rest of the night, or do you think that it was like 2 seconds and then she, like, kinda turns over?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think it's extra ambiguous and, for good reason. It again
Yeah,
adds to the dreamlike state of this film in that time has no meaning. Um, uh,
yeah,
but yeah, I think it's possible that maybe she nodded off for the span that it took her friend to fall asleep and, a little bit, but then she just woke up in the middle of the night again.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, eventually she does nod off because we get another dream sequence. We pass through a dark tunnel with a wet and uneven floor and indistinct shapes lining the walls. Instead of a door, we come to an opening lined with might be human limbs. Kind of hard to tell.
I
They kind
call
of
it
look.
the booty hole door.
To me, it looked like legs or arms lining it. It was so hard to tell, but yeah.
Yeah, dark. A lot of these scenes are very dark.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's you got to turn that brightness up when you're watching this one. That's for sure. But yeah, we then move through an upside down hallway that looks somewhat similar to the hall from the sleep study. The naked man is standing there, but this time he dissipates into this inky swirl as we pass through him, and we get this like little musical cue as it happens too. And there's this other less than solid figure behind that we also pass through, ultimately moving through a set of double doors. We emerge through a circular opening into a room that features a classroom desk with odd protrusions on top of it, and another circular opening on the far wall. This opening looks corroded around the edges. It's another booty hole there. Yeah. And we figure we get the figure of the man standing on the other side. We pass through and find Sarah just riding her bike through the night. It's, clearly she got to the end of this dream and she's like, nope, nope, I'm out. I need to go clear my head or
So
whatever.
so let me ask this then, because this is like our third, fourth dream right now. So like, do you think that there's a reason why there's separate rooms in these dreams and why there's like every time she goes through a doorway, it's like a different setting almost. So it's like,
Yeah.
what do you think that is implying? Do you think it
I
has
I
any
think
type
a
of
lot of the passage through tunnels, there's a moment once we get the group of the researchers in the sleep study, together where we've got them talking about how some of the images that they're seeing, because spoilers, they're watching people dream through this technology that they're kind of
yeah,
co-opting, but they talk about how there's like this establishment of the dream as somebody is kind of drifting off, and it looks very tunnel like as they're describing that. So I don't know if that has something to do with it. I think it's hard to
'cause it
say.
almost feels like stages. Like this is stage one of the dream. This is stage
Mhm.
two of the dream. Then you're at the end of wherever you end up. It's always like it always tends to be like with that figure of whoever, maybe some kinda naked dude at the end every time, but
Yeah,
sometimes he morphs and sometimes he's, like, chilling, like, I feel like
yeah,
there's, some kinda reasoning on why there's it's just because it's specifically rooms every time, so it's like,
yeah,
why is it a hallway, and then why
yeah.
is there a
Because
door, and then there's a room?
even if it is more open, it's like a big cave or something like
Yeah, yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. There's probably a little bit more meaning and like a little bit more symbolism into it than I managed to dig into. But
Yeah.
the God, the imagery is very cool.
I'd be interested to see. I didn't look up anything from like the any type of interviews or anything, but I wonder if the directors talked about what made him go into these dreamlike rooms or where did they come from, or maybe he doesn't answer at all. I'm not sure.
Yeah. If he's in any way like David Lynch, he's not going to say a peep. It's open to your own interpretation, and that's where he's
It's
going to
fine
leave
too.
that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's fine too.
yeah, absolutely. It's, I mean, that's the nice thing about art in general. You know, it's there for you to, I mean, sure, an artist may have a very, very specific reason why they did something, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it is open to your own interpretation as well. So, yeah,
Yeah, and it
I'm
doesn't
down with
hold your
that.
hand at all. Like I'm glad
No.
that there's films that are just like this where it's like we can have this podcast with several other people and everybody's gonna maybe think about it differently, you know? So
Yeah. Yeah. I like that too. We get our next little chapter card here, the anima and the animus. Um, And yeah, Sarah nervously waiting with the other study participants for the first night to begin. You know, there's a couple of plates of like cookies and crackers and some shitty coffee. And boy, I hope that coffee's decaf because if they're there for a sleep study, they don't need to be getting wired. Um,
yeah, it seems
but
like a kind of
kind of
the wrong
counterintuitive.
thing to give these
Yeah.
people.
Um, but yeah, they make their awkward small talk, and somebody brings up Dr. Meyer, the head of the study. Um, and yeah, we eventually get to Sarah getting set up in a suit that's filled with sensors. You know, it's clearly all sorts of padded too because of the nature of all the sensors and everything. You know, you probably can't have a bunch of blankets and stuff on you. So the suit
Yeah.
is there to provide warmth because you're just going to be lying on top of a bed. I'm sure they heat those rooms like crazy too, just to make sure that people are comfortable. But
I think you'd be
uh,
surprised. I feel like in an actual sleep study, they don't really change anything temperature wise. It's probably like in the 70s.
yeah, yeah, I would think that they have to make you at least comfortable enough that you're not
Exactly.
like too cold or too warm. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that suit feels like something out of Tron or something like that. Um, but we get Emily, Sarah's roommate for the study, arriving. They ask Anita about like the 2-to-1 girls to guys ratio or guy to girl ratio rather, and which she can't answer, as well as what exactly they're studying. She also can't answer that, which I understand in a scientific study like this. Yeah, you can't get into the detail because that affects the results, but also it's like pushed as borderline sinister as far as
Mhm.
they can't answer for nefarious reasons.
I
Um,
would also believe that if this was a real study, they would have signed some contract that would have outlined exactly what they can and cannot talk about. But I think for the movie's purposes, they have to make it kind of ambiguous and make it more like, oh, maybe these scientists are not exactly what they seem.
Yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah, because you'd want to know exactly what you're getting into with a study like this. Sure, you're getting paid and everything, but they can't torture you. They can't,
Yeah.
unless you signed up for it. Some people pay double for that kind of action. But we we get two of the other researchers entering the room to help with the setup. Um,
Yeah.
and we're introduced to Meyer and Riff, although we only see Riff from behind, really, because he's monitoring this bank of little CRT monitors.
Like
And
5 inches. Every screen is one
yeah,
piece of
yeah, yeah. They're very, very tiny. It's interesting. Because it looks so old school. But
Mhm.
we get a narration from Meyer as everybody's drifting off. Stage one, the eyes close, a reduction in activity between wakefulness. The patient can be awakened without difficulty, but if woken at the stage, the person will not feel as if they have slept. Many have a feeling of falling during the first 5 to 10 minutes of sleep, which can cause a sudden muscle contraction called, and he kind of waits for one of the other researchers to chime in. These are probably his grad students, right? And he's like, hypnic myoclonia, and that's Lyle chiming in there. And he's like, yeah, very good. And they go a little bit deeper from here into what they should expect from the participants. And those in the know, it's pretty clear they're interested in studying the dream state during REM. Um, And yeah, Sarah's the first to start dreaming here. Um, but they don't really give us a dream sequence this time around. We just cut to the next morning and they're questioning her about her experience the night before, which I found
Yeah.
kind of interesting. They skipped over one, and maybe it's to lull us into this. Yeah, she's doing well with the sleep study. It's helping her out. She's not getting the nightmares. Things are good type of vibe, because man, is she psyched the next morning as she's
Mhm.
answering their
Completely
questions.
rested, like, what?
Yeah. She feels pretty good. She's jazzed about the
Yeah.
experience. And then we cut to her kind of hanging out by the river under a bridge, continuing to ignore phone calls from her mother, because she definitely gets one here. And we get the researchers just excitedly sharing their findings with Dr. Meyer, and they're like vibrating. They're so happy about things. And he says something to them like, "That good, huh?" So
Mhm.
yeah, we know they're getting that awesome data. And we've got from here Sarah browsing at a bookstore, and she pulls, of course, a Philip K. Dick book out of the bookshelf, and because those who know, almost everything that man wrote about is about either the nature of reality or what it means to be human or alternate universes. This is definitely the kind of author that you talk about in a movie like this. Um,
See, I
it's
actually didn't know that, but that's actually interesting because obviously the book that she pulls is important to this whole overall story, but I didn't know anything about the book. But why would they have just randomly picked some some book if it didn't matter, you know?
yeah. I mean, Philip K. Dick, of course, he wrote the story the Blade Runner's based on.
Mhm.
Um, what Total Recall.
That makes sense then,
Oh,
makes a lot of sense.
oh yeah, The Man in the High Castle. Um,
Okay.
yeah, a prolific author, and again, most of his stories have something to do about the nature of reality or what it means to be human. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, it's cool, but also very on the nose. And we get Riff, and we don't know that he's named Riff quite yet, because
Not yet.
if you played it with subtitles on, they keep referring to him by his given name Jeremy, but yeah. We get him kind of nerding out about the book choice and about Philip K. Dick and talking to her, and Eh,
He's
it's
silhouetted too.
yeah. You
Doesn't
don't really get him until he is very much introduced when some bad things are happening later.
yeah.
But we get her reaction to talking to him. I thought this was kind of interesting because she seems like kind of flirtatious with him a little bit, and it's interesting because, to me at least, in that I don't know if she's appreciative of the attention here and she's playing along with it, or she's playing along with it more so to get this guy to leave her alone.
Yeah,
It's kind of
yeah.
hard to tell.
But I
Um,
think that's the general thing about trying to meet somebody in a random bookstore in the first place or anywhere. It's
yeah,
like you don't really know if you kind of struck out or if this could lead to something later. And obviously we know where it goes, but it's like
right.
it's so ambiguous with when it comes to just meeting people in general.
Yeah, and I think we get a little bit of a hint of how she was feeling, at least in this first moment, because later she's at a movie with Zoe. They're watching some random horror movie with lots of screaming, and
Black and white.
yep, and we see Riff sitting down in the theater, and Sarah recognizes him right away. Um,
Yep.
After the film's done, they're leaving, and Sarah tells Zoe that this man's following her. She wants to avoid him. Um, and again, we don't really see him turn around so much. We see his face just kind of, a little bit from behind and from the side, right? Um, but later that night, Sarah is getting ready for the evening at the sleep center, and she's kind of wondering why Emily, the other girl in the study, isn't there. Lyle's kind of getting her set up, and he doesn't know, but he just assumes that she's either running late or she dropped out, because he says that kind of stuff happens all the time. He wishes her a good night, and that's
Do you
kind of
do you
that.
think that the point of this introduction to Emily was to have this type of dialogue and interaction to where she would leave on purpose, or do you think that she actually meant something to the
I
story?
I think that she doesn't necessarily mean things to the story. I think it's a couple of different things. It's to establish that, people kind of drop out of these things
Mhm.
and they make it seem like less of a big deal when ultimately when Sarah needs to, for reasons. But also just the dreamlike nature of the film. In
Mhm.
dreams, there are people that sort of pop in and pop out, and they don't really mean anything.
Yep.
And that's very much what a character that has like one or two lines and is never seen again in a film can mean as well. Um, so I think it's kind of both of those things to a certain degree.
I think
Um,
I agree with that.
yeah. I don't think it's something worth dwelling on too much, but also, I don't know. I just find it interesting that they make a big deal of introducing her and then she's suddenly gone. But
Mhm.
yeah, we cut to our next dream sequence. We've got flickering light fixtures and odd floating things. It's you really can't tell what they are, and I don't think you're meant to.
Yep. Yep.
But we get a dark figure rising up, and we move through its blackness into a room with bodies being suspended from the ceiling by all four limbs. We pass through double doors and are confronted by this statue of a cherub that's just kind of in your face for the barest second. And,
Yeah.
it's, I can't remember if we ever talked Doctor Who before, but it always makes me think of like the Weeping Angels. And they're basically
Oh, yeah.
these,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and, kind of
Yeah.
terrifying statues, right? Except this one, it's just a cherub. It's just the fact that it is so bright and just in your face in that moment that
It
it's
is.
a decent little jump scare there. And Sarah snaps awake, kind of gasping, and she unstraps her headgear and looks over, and Emily's bed is still empty. And we get Riff continuing to monitor her. They are very much cluing us in that this dude likes to watch her. Um, that he does. Oh,
Weirdo.
yes,
Weirdo alert.
he is. And that'll come back quite a bit in this film, won't it?
It only gets
Uh,
worse.
it does. It gets so much worse. The next morning, Anita shows Sarah images trying to gauge her reactions to them. Sarah doesn't understand and kind of feels nothing, but she asks Anita if Emily is still in the study. And Anita responds kind of with this irritated, probably not. Um, she
Sounds
is
like my girlfriend.
really focused on what she's trying to do here. Um, but yeah, Sarah's concerned about her, but Anita just brushes it off as another no-show. Michael, he brushes it off because of the other interviews that they still need to conduct that morning before they can all go home and go to bed. Because remember, these guys get to stay up all night while everybody else in the study themselves, the participants, are sleeping. Um, so this is where Anita places this final picture on the table. And Sarah gets a good look at this thing, and we don't really see it super clearly until after what happens. But Sarah starts to kind of seize a little bit here, and
Mhm.
she's having something of a panic attack, or at least that's how she describes it. But it really feels to me more like she's having a seizure in these moments where she's kind of vibrating like this in this film. But it's revealed to be a picture of the man from her dream. Um, yeah. Uh,
Why do you think she has a seizure like that? Or in general, like, because it happens more than once, and we'll get to that later, but it's like,
right.
why do you think they chose to show it as a seizure in these moments when it gets, like, almost to where she's it's almost getting clarity, and every time she gets near the clarity moment, that's when she starts, like,
Yeah.
flipping out.
I think that could just be, potentially her brain trying to keep her from trauma, possibly. Um, yeah, because it, and we'll get into this at the end of the film where
It's hard not to talk about
I
it, though. Don't say that part.
know, I know, but seriously, if you are watching or listening to this podcast and you have not seen this film, what the
Yeah.
hell is wrong with you, first of
Yeah.
all? But yeah, I feel like it's the kind of thing where not knowing the ending of the film, this is just, kind of played for, almost more shock value or just general weirdness, right?
Yeah. I
I don't
definitely
know.
have thoughts about it, that'll come at the end, but, I have thoughts about a lot of the things that we haven't really touched on yet, but it all makes sense when we when we talk about the end,
It
so
will all
I'm
come
just kind
full
of waiting
circle.
to kinda
Yeah,
bring
yeah.
it all back.
Yeah, Anita yells for Michael to go get Riff. And when Riff enters the room, it's revealed that he's the man from the bookstore and the movie theater. And Sarah is shocked and Riff is embarrassed.
Dirty
Um,
Harry Potter.
oh, yeah. Yeah. Yup. He and Sarah grab a coffee to speak in private because he does not want his coworkers there to hear all about this. And yeah,
Rightfully so.
yeah. She is incredibly uncomfortable here. He tries
Mhm.
to tell her that he wasn't following her, but she's not having it. And she kind of
Yeah.
lets him have it. The quote that I have here highlighted is magical fucking nerd charms. Um,
Yep.
Oh, because she keeps calling him nerd over and over again. How he, never leaves his nerd cave, and this might be, the only chance to, get a nerd wife. And yeah, yeah, she's pretty harsh, and rightfully so, because yeah, he's kind of stalking her a little bit throughout this film. Not really, kind of. Yeah, he's stalking her. Not great, not great, my dude.
Yeah.
Um, there's better ways to try to get a lady, but yeah, he pleads with her not to quit the study based on his actions, but she tells him she's quitting because of the panic attack she's just experienced and nobody
Mhm.
explaining what's going on. We kind of go from there to Dr. Meyer chastising Anita for showing Sarah the photos. And she's like, a little kid that just got called on the carpet there. But she just wanted to see if they remember their dreams. But Dr. Meyer wants them to get back to pure research and not interaction, which kind of makes sense considering what they're trying to, catalog and, what they're researching. Um, yeah, Anita was getting a little too antsy there. We get Sarah hanging out at a laundromat and sort of spacing out, watching the clothes bounce around in the dryer. And she's just kind of thinking about stuff. And we see shadows of, figures kind of hanging over her shoulder off in the corner of the room. Um, and this is where she gets a call from Zoe, but the connection's bad.
Mm.
And she kind of looks up and freaks out at what she sees, although we don't see exactly what she's seeing. But then she has one of those kind of episodes again. And
Yep.
I love the flashing lights in this part. And the sound almost makes, and this might be where you're going with it. It almost feels like, somebody going through an MRI. With the droning and the mechanical sounds that we experience along with this.
Mm.
But ultimately, yeah. Ultimately, she
Mm.
passes out, and this older woman kind of shakes her awake, telling her that some boys stole something from her. And
Yep.
she realizes, oh shit, it's her phone. And she runs
Of course it
outside
is.
with a fuck, but she finds nobody. And
Yep.
at this point, her life's kind of crumbling because the sleep study thing's not panning out. She doesn't have her phone. Given her situation, that very much is her life crumbling. She bikes over to Zoe's. She's, ringing the doorbell, throwing rocks at her window and all that stuff, but nobody's home. And light on options, she decides to confront Riff outside the sleep study. And basically, she'll come back if he can explain what it is that they're really studying, which, he's kind of reluctant to do, as it's going to skew the results of the study. But she implores him, as she's worried the study is having something of a negative effect on her. He invites her inside and pleads with her not to tell anyone what he's about to show her. And he brings out sort of this less cozy version of the headgear that the participants wear in the study. And he places it on his head and explains how a scientist from Berkeley figured out a way to decode what our brain is processing when we see something and interpret it as moving images. And he demonstrates by waving his hand in front of his eyes, and you see, the super grainy pixelated version of his hand waving around on this tiny little monitor. And then we see his view of her then on the monitor as well. And, she finds it pretty cool and everything. And I love this interaction where she thinks it's cool, and his immediate reaction is to reach out and touch the leg of the girl he was stalking. Yeah. And just her face just falls immediately, and he realizes what he's done too. And it's a bad Riff, bad.
It's crazy too, because he seems very childlike in a lot of ways. But obviously, I think that they're trying to just show that it's like maybe inexperience, or he's not used to having this, or
he's socially awkward a little bit. It's.
Yeah, I mean, totally. Like, I think that, oftentimes it's like a stereotype, but a lot of scientists maybe are socially awkward and don't have interactions like this. So I think it all plays into the whole scientist ideology.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, which is a shame because, he's a good looking cat, but,
he's not bad looking.
It's one of those things where, given what he does for a living and given that he's lived his life in academia, he probably just finds himself kind of pigeonholed in that nerd persona. And so probably doesn't think too highly of himself either. So, that kind of all goes hand in hand, right? So he goes on to explain how he immediately thought of the potential applications of a device like this. And Sarah kind of puts it together at this point. They're watching their dreams because, of course, if this device can interpret the signals that your brain is processing of what you see, then by all means, it should be able to process what it is that you're dreaming. It's a little bit of a leap there, but also... Yeah.
Which would actually be insane if we had some shit like this. Like, it would be nuts.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It absolutely terrifying in some ways, but it would be so interesting. So he takes her to, and this was all taking place in his personal office, but he takes her to the station where they monitor the participants, and he shows her some footage, and he makes a big point of saying not hers because he doesn't want to freak her out and have her go through an experience like earlier. But he mentions how the footage shows a particularly scary dream early on. He may have to cut it short because, again, he doesn't want to freak her out. But the feed on the monitor transitions to a dream itself. I love, cuts like this, sort of match cuts that go through some type of a screen or something like that into the actual thing that you're watching on the screen. Always a fun technique as far as I'm concerned. And we get what looks like a hospital bed balanced on a set of winding stone steps. As we approach the bed, a hand reaches out from underneath, offering an egg. The view shifts upward as the stairs are ascending with wrapped figures hanging from either side. Stones reach out after, and you hear them kind of crunching. And there's this bed with incredibly long legs stretching down into the mist off to the side. When we get get to the top of these stairs, we see a throne, a tricycle, some toys kind of strewn about a little bit. And there's a jack in the box cranking away in the middle. And we realize that the music that that's been playing here in this scene is the diegetic sound of the box itself.
Mhm.
We linger on the box, expecting it to spring open. And instead, the view whips to the left and it's a spooky face.
Yeah.
And Riff quickly pauses the playback, nervously chuckling. It's I this is one of the really fun ones. Yep. It's just there and it's got, glowing eyes and it's yeah.
Mhm.
It's
Oh, man.
love it. And Sarah says, are my dreams that messed up? And I'm like, I don't know if this was that messed up of a dream, but it was definitely interesting. And he says sometimes, and she questions if he feels like they're seeing something that they're not supposed to. And
Oh,
I'd say
surprise.
that's a big 10-4 there. But yeah, he
Epic
says,
out the window.
yeah. Yeah. He says he wouldn't be doing this if he didn't have a reason. And I'm like, which is? And before he can answer or deflect, they hear footsteps and they realize they got to scoot. So they step outside and Sarah reluctantly agrees to come back to the study. And we get our next chapter card, The Shadow, because this is where we're really interested to the, or introduced rather to the sleep paralysis monsters. I keep thinking of them as, or sleep paralysis demons. But
Yeah.
yeah, that night, everybody's tucked into their sensor suits and they're snoozing away. And we get lights strobing around the kind of like the broken face of a statue. I don't know if I linger on this scene. The more I do or rewind it and then look back again, if it's supposed to be Sarah's face kind of deconstructed or not. Um,
I didn't think of it like that, but
it was
now that
so
you
hard to
say that,
tell. And
maybe.
it's like, I need to watch this a few more times, that specific scene,
Yeah,
just to see if I can catch it or not. Um, but yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, and we kind of pass through the broken pieces of the face, and there's another door swinging open for us beyond. We descend through the middle of a spinning staircase now as we pass through that door. And there's a light flickering at the bottom. But instead of moving toward it, we pass through a hatch that creaks open in the middle of the ground. The light flickers around the silhouette of a man again, but steadies as we draw near, and his eyes begin to glow, and we cut to Riff's monitor as we see the glowing eyes there as well. And yeah,
Do you think
that's
there's a purpose for them always like in the dreams, we're always moving forward or like kind of in like a we're almost like on a track. Like at a fair or something. Like you're on this track and you're always moving through
yeah,
something
yeah. Or
or
the
like
camera, which is us, is just always on a dolly moving forward.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, I mean, if we want to get like extra Freud about it with, tunnels and
Lots of
so
philosophical.
on.
Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah, yeah. That could have something to do with it because at the end of the day, with Freud, everything was sex. But, um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it is interesting that we are always, always moving forward with rare exceptions in these dreams.
Right.
And
Maybe that's to kind of instill the point that like we don't really dwell on our dreams too often. At least most of us probably don't. Like,
yeah,
you have your dream and then it's over, and then by the afternoon you kind of forgot what happened. So
right.
maybe that's just trying to show that like it's all moving all the time, and then it's not really something you need to worry about as you move forward in life. I don't know. That's just a philosophical take on it, what it could be, I guess.
No, no, I think that's absolutely fair. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because you're right. Yeah, more often than not, you do not remember much of a dream, and when you do, it is only for that brief moment after you've woken up, and it's
Mhm.
rare that it lingers very strongly unless you've actually written stuff down about it to
Yeah.
reinforce anything. So yeah, like you
Yeah, because
said,
even
just
some of the like, the images and the silhouettes that we see, as we see more of the dreams, they get less human-like, so they're always morphing around, but at the very beginning, we just have, like, a steady image of whatever the silhouette person or
mhm.
thing is, but as we go on, it gets more ambiguous, and we kinda get more into this, like, wave of different imagery.
Yeah.
The Yeah, it's just interesting.
Yep. And again, I'm sure there's deeper symbolism in a lot of what we specifically see in these dreams. Or it could be a whole lot of this just looks kind of cool. Let's throw that in there.
Yeah.
You know?
Could be.
Yeah, yeah. We get the other researchers gathering around as Riff attempts to kind of clean up the image so they can see it a little bit more clearly. And the camera shows us that the shadowy figures are in all of the dreams that they are recording. Eventually, they all end up like this, they say. He admits that he's seen these figures in his own dreams since he was 6 years old. And
Which is an interesting thing to say too, because I also put that in my notes, but it's like, that has to mean something to the overall story, right? Like,
it
because
could.
if he's
Yeah.
been seeing them early, it's almost like the study shifts to his study, like, he wanted this study instead of the actual guy who's overseeing the entire thing, Dr. Myers or whatever. I
Yeah.
think that it shifts at this point to, like, "Oh, maybe we started the study for Riff instead." Maybe he's the
Yeah.
one who suggested it.
I think it's very clear that Riff and Meyer sort of found each other, and that's what this whole thing kind of came from. Because, even though, yeah, Riff is definitely like the number two, it is very much both of their show at the end of the day. It's,
He almost seems like the catalyst for the
yeah.
whole.
Yeah, because he talks about how he was the one that thought of the potential applications of the technology from the scientists at Berkeley and so on. So yeah, that is interesting. Um, he's been thinking about it for a very long time, at the very least. Um,
Mhm.
we get Sarah starting to violently shake, and Anita runs off to check on her. Sarah gasps and wakes up, removing her helmet. Anita very aggressively asks her if she's okay. It's her tone in this moment feels very odd to me. Um, and Sarah's like, fuck this place. No, I'm not okay. She's hurriedly stripping off the sensor suit and throwing her clothes on. And Anita tries telling her that it was just a nightmare. And Sarah asks a knowing question. Yeah, like, oh, how do you know? Yeah. Then telling her that she knows what they're doing. Riff sees this from the monitoring station and he panics
He's
and
like, "Oh,
run.
shit."
Oh, I know. He's like, oh, fuck me. It's all downhill from here.
Yeah.
He
He was like, "I just told her yesterday, god dang it."
Yep. Yep. He panics and runs out of the monitoring room. And before Sarah can leave her room, Anita draws attention to her bleeding eye. And then Riff enters the room and Sarah storms out, Anita demanding to know what the fuck is going on. Um, Clearly, she understands that there is something more than just this participant being upset. Um, and Riff kind of runs off and she tells him, hey, Dr. Meyer's coming in at 2 a.m. and she needs to know what to tell him, right? Riff doesn't say much. He just chases off after Sarah. And we get Dr. Meyer in his own office. I don't think he's at home. I think he's in his office, probably at another building in the university or whatever. And he's sipping coffee and staring at video of the shadowy figure from the dreams. Um, And I don't know that they actually get audio from the dreams, but he's got a set of cans on. Maybe he's just, he's got some jams on to go along with his research. Who knows? But, and here we get kind of three planes of action. We get Meyer on his way to the sleep center, sort of, driving oh crap, Riff's got to find Sarah, better hurry so that he can get back, because that's, kind of propelling our antsiness here. We get Sarah fleeing on her bike and Riff driving around looking for her. Ultimately, he does see her chaining up her bike to a chain link fence, and then she's running into this club looking for her friend Zoe, and she knows the bouncer Bill. He just lets her right in. That's the other thing where clearly this is Canada as well, because she's like 18 and she's getting into a club.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's I had to double check drinking age in Canada, because some of the provinces it's 19, some of them it's 18.
Okay.
Because I know, being here in Michigan, you've got, what is it, Ontario, where, that's the one right next to us with Toronto and everything. And, the big deal if you're in the Detroit area, but you're underage, is being able to drive across the border and go to clubs and bars in Windsor, where it is legal to buy alcohol. And then you sober up just enough to drive home and, lather, rinse, repeat, right? But if this were in Quebec, she would be legal to go to a club and drink. So in any event, she's clearly knows this bouncer well enough to just let her walk right in past this line of people waiting to get into this place.
All he said was, is Zoe working? And he was like, yep. Go inside. I could have said that too. I'm just some random person. Hey, is Zoe working? Let me get in.
Yeah.
Line behind me.
Yep. And we get Michael, Anita, and Lyle nervously continuing to monitor the other participants. They're desperate for Riff to get back and do some splaining, in addition to wanting to avoid any confrontation with Dr. Meyer. And then we get the two gentlemen in room C. They're waking up and they are paralyzed with fear. It's happening, one of them says. And I mean, what's the true goal of this study? Is it to manifest a sleep paralysis demon? Is that what they're trying to do? For sure. It's, this is the end state that they want from their research. They want people waking up out of their nightmares and having a massive freak out. We get Anita asking Lyle to get a hold of Riff, and Meyer enters the doorway behind. He's like, "What's going on?" It's not in any type of like accusing way or anything like that. Nope. He's just checking in, seeing what's happening.
What's up?
Yeah. And we cut to the club for here, and Sarah is like super out of it, and it is the most down tempo synth pop at this club. And, everybody's looking like they're having this awesome time, but it's super slow and mellow. Yeah. Although everybody's
on acid.
Yeah, that's what it is. And again, we get Riff entering the club and looking around for her, and I'm really not sure how he got in so fast, unless he bribed Bill at the door. Yeah, because otherwise, yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah. But yeah, Sarah, she runs off to the restroom to go worship the porcelain god because she's not feeling well. And back at the sleep center, Meyer asks where Riff is, and Anita kind of covers for him, just telling the doctor that he had to run home for something. Meyer doesn't want Riff to miss what they're witnessing, as it's everything the young scientist has been waiting for. Again, he's not like, hey, where's Riff? He's supposed to be here. It's more like concern because he understands, that this is important to Riff. And we cut from the monitors to room C, where one of the participants sees a shadowy figure in the corner of the room. The researchers can see them on the monitor as well, and it's fucking terrifying. Cut to the club, where Riff finds Sarah passed out in the restroom. He scoops her up and
With
rushes.
another line.
Say again? Oh,
There's
yeah, yeah,
another
yeah. The
line.
line to the restrooms. Yeah. Yeah,
You just
because
saw
there
all
are some people
the room.
reacting behind him as he's charging down that hallway, kind of like, what the fuck? We gotta pee too. But yeah, yeah. Uh, but yeah, he just kind of blows by and scoops her up and rushes her out. And Bill is kind of concerned, but not enough to stop him. He's like, well, I still
No,
got several hours on my shift here. So,
you just let some dude carry a passed out girl.
that he knows.
That he knows. Oh man, that
Oh.
whole part is crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Again, sort of lending things to the dreamlike nature of things because, yeah,
Absolutely.
yep.
Once you get it, you get it.
Yep,
It's
yep. We see the shadows advancing on the monitors, and Michael feels rough about having the participants experience this. And Dr. Meyer agrees that it's horrible, but he knows they need this data. And back to Riff driving off with Sarah in the back seat. We get Lyle running into room C to reconnect some sensor connections that kind of came loose or something while the two guys are freaking out here, and the shadows continue to intensify. And things sort of come to a head, and the two participants sit bolt upright at the same time, and their eyes are white, and all the monitors kind of wink out.
Yeah, that shit's crazy.
Yeah. And we're at the end of this particular chapter. We move on to the self, where we zoom in on an inactive monitor and fade to black. We emerge into a room with some unsettling statues flanking our path and a flashlight illuminating a rectangle taped out on the far wall. The light fades and we pass through the rectangle, emerging from a cave with shifting rock formations to what feels like the door to a crypt, flanked by some candles. The candles could almost be the glowing eyes of one of these specters. We pass through that doorway, through a hall with ornate windows on either side, and come to a figure surrounded by strings or cables of some sort, with this black rectangle covering his torso. And we pass through that rectangle, emerging from the darkness to a rocky landscape and flickering light. The rocks are revealed to be figures reaching out to the same spectral figure in the center of this formation. We move closer and closer to its glowing eyes, and Sarah snaps awake. These are so fucking cool.
They're very well made dreamscapes for sure.
Yes, yes. Yeah, honestly, if either one of us had a dream like one of these, we'd probably be pretty freaked out waking up as well.
Yep, I'd be in that study with Sarah. It's like we'd be high-fiving every
Yep.
Tuesday or whatever.
Yep. Cookies and decaf. Here we go.
Yeah, that's right. They always have coffee no matter what.
Oh yeah. So yeah, she wakes up and she's got a funky new eye patch and she's on a strange couch. Let's also comment on the fact that Riff has clearly swapped out her sweater because it's a completely different color at this point. So that's not creepy at all. No.
Rip's not doing well for himself with this whole time.
No. It's he's kind of a creep. Kind of, yeah, kind of, sort of, yeah. But she passes through the apartment, finding sheets and tarps kind of draped over everything, really, including a similar bank of monitors to what you see at the sleep center. I think
I do like when she was looking out the window too, how instead of using the entire blue scene, they used like the pool reflection from when she was looking down, and then it
yep.
was like blue on the ceiling. thought that was pretty cool.
Yep, that was neat. I think with all the sheets and tarps and stuff, it's almost meant to imply that he is hardly there. He spends most of his
Yeah.
time, working with his research. Um, but yeah, she steps into the bathroom to look at her eye. Pulling aside the eye patch there, it's super bloodshot. And I noticed for the first time in this rewatch that eye is no longer blue. It is brown. She's got some heterochromia going on there because she has two blue eyes in every other scene except for this one. She covers it back up and you can see her kind of psyching herself up to enter the bedroom. Because, clearly she's in a strange apartment. I'd be freaked out too, probably. But yeah, she finds Riff asleep on top of the covers and ratchet strapped to his own bed. And he's wearing, one of the lower end versions of the sensor caps. I don't know if you noticed as well, like the headboard is wrapped in blankets as well, kind of like in The Exorcist.
Yeah.
Just in case he's having like a night terror or something like that, he doesn't hurt himself then.
Yep.
But
He's been doing this a long time.
clearly, she follows the cables leading from him along the floor back to the bank of monitors, and she pulls aside the tarp and she flips them on, and she sees his dreams this time. He's dreaming of driving with her in the passenger seat. And the dream kind of changes to vampire versions of themselves, sort of making out. And then
She's entranced in this whole vision of watching this shit. Like she's just like wide open, like
yep.
not moving an inch while watching it.
Oh yeah, and we get some fun synth pop playing in the background during all this too, and she kind of hears him waking up in the other room, and then sees on the monitors his perspective from the other room. You can see his feet there, and he's paralyzed with fear, and we can see one of the shadows on the monitor, and this is something cool that I only ever noticed in this rewatch. It kind of seems to beckon to her through Riff's vision. You see its arm kind of gesture in sort of almost like a come hither type of move. And she runs into the bedroom trying to wake him up. And we see the shadow growing closer on the monitor. Of course, she can't see it because she's not experiencing this, but she does manage to snap him out of it before it's too late. And we get a little, hey, oh shit. Yeah. We cut to a donut shop where he just watches her eat.
Yeah, this dude is weird. All right, like he likes weird stuff.
Yep. Because I'd be scarfing down that donut that's in front of him. Nothing like late night donuts and coffee. Come on. And she, I think she's starting to get into him watching her at this point because she's got this kind of half smile on her face as he's looking at her. And she walks off to the restroom to check on her eye. And this time it's blue again and like no longer so bloodshot.
That's when she takes the eye patch off for
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like,
the eye patch that's in almost every single poster for this film. Every bit of key art for this film. She returns and asks if she can crash on his couch because she's kind of out of options. And on the way back to his place, they're stopped at a light. And she asks about his name. Why Riff? And it's revealed it's a Rocky Horror reference. Because of Riff Raff, and she gets the reference, and she also gets it in a deeper way, understanding that he is essentially Dr. Meyer's Igor, and this is where he does that super creeper. Well, you're pretty smart for your age. She says that oh yeah. Yeah, big red flags here. She tells him that she's 18, and she brings up right after that she saw his dream, and it's on. It's
This 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 sexual encounter that is gonna happen right here is probably it's definitely up there on my top weird sexual encounters in movies
yeah,
for various reasons.
it is uncomfortable. It is. It is.
Not only are they like not really moving around, like it's very just like bland, but then
Yeah.
she falls asleep. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah,
oh
it's
man.
definitely not sexy having somebody pass out while you're having sex with them. That's for sure. But yeah, they're having sex and Sarah sees the shadow people. You know, at first they're both kind of into it, but then she's less so because she sees the shadow people over his shoulders. And, you know, they kind of approach a little bit and she sort of passes out from fright or something. Yep. Yep. And he doesn't notice, of course, at first because Riff, oh my God, you're just the worst. Um, but he does finally notice, and he's very appropriate in his reaction of noticing.
Thank God.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. And he kind of backs up and he tries to get her to wake up and he can't. So he calls for an ambulance. They race off to the hospital and he's just nervously pacing around. And she has an MRI. And even its loud noises don't wake her. Riff waits by her side in the hospital room, and it's time for a new dream. This time we're moving through the woods. A shadowy person in the form of a tree person sort of splinters and cracks as we approach. And a phone starts ringing as we pass down a hallway, then, a light illuminating a figure behind a curtain to the side. A vault door swings wide, and a shadowy figure is lit behind the type of plastic barriers you see in a meat locker at a butcher shop. And we pass through it and move down a hallway that could very well belong to the hospital that they're in. And we come to a pause as we stare at the dark and hear the patter of bare feet. Lights flip on, and we see this creature made almost entirely from human legs charging at us, and the light turns off again. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And the light turns off again, only to have the creature rush out of the darkness, and Riff snaps awake. So yeah, we see what his dreams are like when he's not dreaming about Sarah. That's for sure. Sarah is
I think that this dream is particularly interesting for, again, I'm waiting on talking about this whole thing, but I think it has a lot to do with my overall interpretation of the movie. But yeah, I just want to put a pin in this dream in particular.
Okay. Okay, we will definitely circle back. Sarah's no longer in her bed, and there's nobody on her floor. Riff is charging down the hall looking for anybody. He's calling out for Sarah. He finally finds a nurse at a desk, and he sounds like a crazy person asking after Sarah. Also, room 237. This is the second film in a row that I've done now that has had a Shining reference with that room number.
Surprise.
Yeah, it's granted, it's a room number that people use in horror films over and over out of respect for that film. But yeah, it's yeah, I mean, what a classic.
I mean, it's another reason why I have to believe that the director is deliberate about everything that he's putting in this film on purpose. So like why we're seeing Sarah's dreams and then why we get one dream for Riff. Like I think it's there's reasons for that.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, he's making enough of a fuss with this nurse that security approaches him from behind. And in my first watch of this, I thought, oh, Riff, you're fucked. And, you're going to be trapped in, like handcuffed to a desk or something like that, and something bad's going to be happening to Sarah. But no, it doesn't play out like this. Luckily, the nurse sends the guard up to the other floor to find one of the nurses. And apparently they have like some kind of a staffing shortage or something like that. And it's likely that they had to move Sarah to a room in a managed bed on a different floor, and they just didn't want to wake him or whatever because he was sleeping.
They just moved an entire floor.
Right. She was the only one up there, so it was easy. But she tells Riff to have a seat in the meantime, but he can't sit still. And as he starts moving around, he glances through the open door of the security station where we see on one of the monitors Sarah sleepwalking through the parking garage. And he races off to find her. He calls out to her, but there's no response. She can't wake up. So he hops on the phone and calls Anita, who just answers with a, "Where the fuck have you been?" He begs her to come help, and she hurriedly gathers up a bunch of gear from his office. We get Riff following Sarah to make sure that she's safe as he waits for Anita to catch up with them. Anita wonders why they don't take her back to the hospital, but Riff doesn't feel she's safe there, being that the doctors don't know any more than they do. They hook up a portable monitor to his prototype headgear, and they follow behind Sarah for what must have been forever, because they're going through like a neighborhood and down a lone road. And, yeah.
Where's all this shit, bro?
Yeah, it's so funny that they don't have anybody that drives by them, and they're like, nobody. Fuck you guys up to? What the fuck are you doing?
It's the one car that pulls up is Anita.
Cars. Again, lending itself to the very dreamlike nature of everything, because nothing is interrupting any of this. But yeah, they can see she's having some sort of a nightmare, so Riff gets a plan. Wake her at the height of her nightmare, because the body tries to reject death in dreams. And Anita's like, "What if you're wrong?" And he's like, "I don't know." So they pass her.
Every plan I got.
Yeah. Yep. So they pass through like this neighborhood and onto this dark road, and then Sarah takes them off road and through the woods. And Anita starts seeing the shadow people on the monitor as they continue down a path in the trees, and there's a whole lot of them too, and they're all kind of leaning in. Riff, he's convinced that Sarah will finally wake up if one of them approaches or touches her. That's not unsettling at all. They emerge from the trees into this clearing, and Sarah's dream shows some type of structure in the middle with stairs leading up to an entrance. This is where Anita starts freaking out, and she wants to call a cab. But then we hear this familiar cell phone ringtone, and they kind of look around trying to pinpoint its location. Riff walks off to find it. Personally, I have no idea how it still has a charge at this point, because it's been a couple of days since it was stolen. But Sarah continues.
iPhone.
Yeah.
They last forever.
Yeah, it's a brand new iPhone 15 Pro Max. Yep, that's exactly it. So Sarah continues towards the entrance in her dream as Riff picks up the phone, and he answers the call. And as he does so, the phone goes dark and Sarah collapses to her knees screaming. And the phone's kind of spazzing out as he answers it too. The screen's all like fucked up.
And then was that the part where when he answers it, it looks like a elevator button, like that. It has arrows that are going
something like that. Yeah. It's yeah.
It definitely has an arrow shape. Like there's arrows on it. It looked like when he flicks it up, it's like a elevator motion.
Yeah. And she gasps and cries, wanting to know what's happened. And Riff apologizes as he gets the headgear off of her. And she asks him, "You saw?" As she's sobbing, and he hugs her.
Like,
"Yeah, we saw."
we fucking saw.
We saw a lot of things.
You walked 17 miles away from the hospital. Like, I'm
It's a
tired of this shit. It's
good thing you
almost
got
5
these
a.m.
fluffy slippers on because your feet would be bloody by this point.
Yeah.
And so he hugs her and they start heading back down the path through the woods. Anita thinks they're kind of lost. So Riff pulls out a cell phone out of his pocket and it's Sarah's phone. She asks him where he got it. And he tells her all is in the field. And she's like, this is my phone. And he wonders if she lost it out there, but she's never been before. Anita wonders if she had an episode before that took her out there into the clearing. But this is where Sarah's phone is continuing to glitch. And it says like 10:01 or something like that. And she asks Riff the time. And he checks his watch with a what the fuck, and it's a similar time on his watch, and I'm not sure what the significance of all of that is, but all of a sudden this is where the trio kind of hears the leaves rustling around them, and before you know it, you start seeing glowing eyes in the darkness, and Sarah's like, "Run!"
Yeah, I was
And
thinking that because it said 10:01, not that the time specifically had anything to do with it, but I feel like 10:01 is a palindrome because it's the same forward and
yeah,
back. So I thought maybe that had some significance to do with it.
no, that could be. I don't know. It just
Almost
feels
like
like
infinity.
yeah. And it also feels like it should be much later at night, given everything that's transpired. It should be like the
Yeah.
wee hours of the morning, right?
Yeah,
Um,
there should be sun coming up.
yeah. This is this unending night. Um, so they head down the path running. Anita, I think was the one with the flashlight. She's in the rear. She can't run as fast as them. And, she's taken as,
She's like,
yeah, she's like, please no. And she's ripped backwards. And Riff is like, just keep breathing. Um,
yeah. Why aren't they like holding hands? They're just running. Like
I
he's
know,
talking to
right?
like her body. Like,
Yeah. And well, he's next. And, like when I say they're taken, I mean the darkness swallows them and they are pulled back even as they run forward. It's, yep. It's, I love the effect. I think it's super cool. But yeah, it's, you add a little boop. And it's a little extra funny then. But Sarah stops and looks around, and the only light at this point is from her cell phone. And
yeah.
the darkness kind of closes in closer and closer, and we hear twigs snapping around her. And a figure with glowing eyes looms before her, slowly coming into focus. And this is where she awakens, gasping, naked, and covered with blood, straddling Riff with her thumbs in his eye sockets.
Fucking riff. Like,
At the end of the day, maybe that dude got what he deserved. I don't know. It's
perhaps.
but she
So that seemed like a lot of blood for just some eye sockets, though.
yeah. And maybe
Because their
there's
whole shit is covered.
yeah. Yeah. And it's around her mouth as well. And maybe there's a reason for
But
that
we knew
too.
why. Yeah.
Yep. So she gets up and she's clearly shaken. And she gets up and walks past the little bank of monitors and heads off to the bathroom. And she looks at herself in the mirror, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And then her phone goes off. And she picks it up. It's on top of the toilet seat. And she picks it up and she reads something and sets it back down and goes back to looking at herself in the mirror, realizing now that she has the fangs that she saw in Riff's dream, and she starts to laugh. The camera slowly moving away from her and back to the phone where the message is still on the screen that she just read. If you're reading this, you've been in a coma for almost 20 years. We are trying a new technique. We don't know where this message will end up in your dream. Please wake up. And fizzle out to credits and synth pop. Okay. Time for Dim's thoughts on Come True. Here we go.
Oh, actually, at first, I wanted to get what your interpretation is on this ending and that message. Do you think that she was actually in a coma, or do you think that something else is going on?
I think it's very, very easy to read this in both of those ways. And in that, yes, it could be a very, very literal interpretation in that, yes, she's been in a coma for almost 20 years. Everything that we've seen, experienced has just been her dreams. That's why, things don't quite line up, why suddenly she's got this other situation going on where she's like a vampire or something. Um,
Mhm.
and, you've got other things in that it could be just separate realities, even. Um, it could be that,
Well,
you
if
know,
she's in a coma, and let's say that she's been doing this for 20 years, right? So, like, you'd have to believe that she's not consistently in REM. That means that throughout her 20-year span, each time she goes into REM, you would have to imagine that it's a different dream, which could also be why this is the version of the dream where she gets to be a vampire, or this
mhm.
is the version of the dream while they're doing a sleep study or whatever. So I think that that's definitely one interpretation I have on it, but it's not my primary one.
Yeah, and then we also get, the little hints of, she's having a seizure and spazzing out, and we're getting loud droning noises because ultimately in those moments, she's getting an MRI. And ultimately, that's fucking with the overall experience in these dreams or realities or whatever. Um, boy,
Yeah,
it,
when I think I mentioned it in the beginning a little bit, but when I first saw it, my initial interpretation was that it was an alien abduction. Like, I thought that these were figures that maybe she was seeing because they're the ones that captured her, and then she was sent
mhm,
back to Earth, and now she's all jacked up because they probably probed and prodded and all that stuff.
mhm.
But, I've now switched to a different, because as we're talking about it, I feel like I'm switching to a whole 'nother theory where I believe that Riff is the one in the coma, and we're seeing everything through his realities, because most of the exposition comes from what he sees, what he knows, the people that are around him, and she's just one of those people. But I believe that she was probably like his wife or girlfriend or love interest, or somebody like important to him. Maybe she's the girl that keeps visiting him for 20 years or whatever. Um, but I think that we get most of the personal interactions come from him, like, and
Mhm.
I believe that maybe those are his friends in real life, and he's like, they're the ones that are also coming to visit him, and,
Yeah.
you know,
M
uh,
maybe
because
they're
we
maybe they're both in a coma. Maybe they're both in some type of a study, and it's some kind of a shared thing at the end of the day.
could be.
And maybe those shadow figures are the people actually researching them. It's, it's
See, I believe that the shadow figures are interpretations of, like, the doctors and the people who are
yeah.
coming to work on him, and because they're never fully realized, I think that it's because he probably never saw them in the first place, because he was probably in a coma or
Mhm.
was put into the hospital before he got to see all those people. So those are his mind's interpretations of whatever the doctors are doing with him and
Yeah, because
everything.
he's not fully cognizant of them in front of him anyways, because he's out of it or she's out of it. It's yeah. It's entirely possible. Um, I just kind of want the sequel with her badass vampire adventure.
I think he I could see a sequel with just exploring a different type of dreamscape like that.
Sure. Yeah, it's again, I love the breaking of reality in general. I love just not being able to be 100% on board with what is very much really happening as well is just perfect to me. I love this being as ambiguous as it is.
I was gonna say too, when we talked about him having the dream and the one time that we see his dream, it's in the hospital, which means that if we can see his dream and her dream, wouldn't it make it his dreams in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, potentially. It's
'Cause how could we see both dreamscapes? Obviously, it's a movie, so they're trying to give it
right.
enough exposition, but it's like, why would they make it so specific that one time we see his dream and it's the exact, like, forest scape kinda thing that they enter at the end of the movie, so it's like,
Yeah.
that's why I was like, "Oh, shit, well, maybe it's always been his dream in the first place."
Yeah, very well could be. And that's kind of why I feel like maybe this is some kind of a shared thing after all, because we do get, multiple perspectives that shouldn't be able to know each other's. Um,
Which could be
so
true since that text comes through and it says that there's a study, so there could be a bunch of coma people in a room connected to some huge machine, and
yeah,
maybe they're all getting studied together, which would fall in line with both of them having dreams at the same time.
yeah,
Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're going inception into each other's dreams and it's like then you just go down the rabbit hole.
yeah, yeah. No, that's what makes movies like this so much fun, because you can, do all your theory crafting that you want, and it's never going to be fully understood unless, the artist comes right out and says exactly what they intended. So that would be interesting to actually spend some time delving into that to see if there's any interviews out there or anything, um, and find out how wildly off base we both are. But
Yeah, he's probably like, "Yeah, that's not anything what I was thinking about this whole
yeah,
time." Like,
yeah, it's like, you guys are a couple of sickos, and at the end of the day, this is so much more straightforward than you're thinking. But
I wanna know what her eye bleeding and changing color has to do with anything,
I don't know.
because
Maybe
it was
it's back
kinda
to the alien abduction thing, because there's always the things, like in Fire in the Sky and stuff like that, of all
Yeah,
the different probes and
exactly.
stuff with the eyeballs. And yeah, you never know. You never know. These could just be
Dang
the
it.
grays. God, it makes me want to watch Communion again sometime soon.
Hell yeah.
Wacky Christopher Walken is always fun, Christopher Walken.
I think
But
that's just him in general.
yeah, it really is. It really is. But yeah, it's, I don't know. It's I want to hear other opinions about this film and about what it all means. Just again, like we said, it's we don't hear a lot about this one. As much as I think there was a little bit of buzz in our social circles around the time that it came out, I want to hear more people talking about this. And yeah. Yeah, just giving a little bit more love to this film. So, God willing,
Well,
like I said, some more people see this thing or listen to it, and some people check it out. It's well worth the time, at least.
I did tell my mom to watch it so that when she comes back and watches this, "Hey, mom, what's up?"
Hey. Mm. Oh, thanks for being a loyal viewer, Dim's mom. At least the episodes he's
Not here.
on. Um, but yeah, it's you continue your streak of most repeat visits. I've definitely got a few people that are up to 3. I don't know if there's anybody who's at 4. But yeah, you have definitely been on the most. We have seen the evolution of Dim's hair throughout these
I
episodes.
know,
It's it's
and it's only gonna get longer, so
that's awesome. But yeah, it's I'm glad we were able to sync up for another one of these too before you head out to Japan, because it'll be a little bit
yeah,
more awkward to coordinate. But we will absolutely have to figure something out again,
I'm sure
because
we're gonna
this
make it work.
yeah, because this is always so much fun. I think we both clearly have some fun time talking about these films. And yeah, it's always good to hang. So yeah, I appreciate you coming by again, big time, because this was a lot of fun. This film, Jesus, it's I remember I downloaded the soundtrack on Spotify and then promptly never listened to it after. It's one of those things where I maybe I just have to be in the right mood for it or something like that, but it is such a fun score. And I know the director, it's like his band that's involved with
Oh,
like a lot of the songs that are in this thing. It's one little bit of research that I did, but
some trivia.
yeah, there you go. But yeah, the score is fantastic because it absolutely suits this. I could not see this with any other type of score. Just it works. Everything needs to feel like a dream in a movie like this, and it absolutely does. So that's absolutely
Yeah,
perfect.
they went with what they were going to accomplish, I think.
Yeah, everybody understood the assignment, right? Yeah, it's good. It's good. Dim, I know that you've been hanging out a little bit more in the Nightlight Discord and everything, but if you'd like, where can people find you?
Gifted Dim 63 on everything. Gifted spelled with a Y. If it's not Gifted Dim 63, it's just Gifted Dim by itself.
Sounds like a solid plan. Yeah, this gentleman right here is, doing his best to be a beacon of positivity, and you love to see it.
Yep.
Yep,
Trying my best
absolutely.
out here, just like I hope everybody else tries their best. And if it's one thing, if you love horror movies, that's what we're here to help you get through your day.
Yep. Yeah, I know plenty of people find this kind of stuff extra cathartic, and that's good. It's good. It's not all blood and guts. It's quite often quite a bit more than that. And some blood and guts. And some blood and guts. But yeah, thanks for coming on.
No problem.
This has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode, but until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.
Hi, guys.